go back off of the headset mic so that I can walk around the room. And we have a bird. So, if you were with us last night, you might remember there being the cameras are frozen again. It appears to be whenever I stop streaming, the cameras get a little weird. The prep camera is good. So I'll just go into the stovetop camera. There we go. Now we have a bird. Now, if you're watching last night, you'll remember that the brine didn't come up quite as high as it does now. And the reason for that is that later in the night I made a little more brine and tossed it in, so I just had a little bit better coverage. Also, you'll note that I have a jar full of water rammed inside the bird. That's to help weigh the bird down, so when it was on its side, it wouldn't float to the top and would stay better submerged in brine. This bottle of water is no longer fit for purpose. So the next thing we want to do is put our hands in the ice cold water, reach in, and pull up the bird, and place it, once I get it to drip out, on this cutting board. I'm going to wash these chickeny hands. I can see that my skin tore a little bit while it was soaking in the pot. That's not the end of the world. I just have to be a little bit careful with that. At this point, the brine can be discarded. Now, when you're dealing with a brine bird, there's a lot of salt on that bird. And while the salt does bring flavor, we don't want the salt to crust up on the exterior skin of the bird. So we need to clean the bird off. And to do that, you just want to take the bird to the sink and rinse it. We will just pop this over to the prep cam so you can see it. And I'm going to go rinse this bird down inside and out. Make sure the water's on cold. And just make sure the bird gets a nice rinse once over. Then we come back to our workstation. And you want to dry the bird off. Again, all we're trying to do here is get the bird in a more amiable state, because we're going to want that nice crispy skin. We're going to want a flavorful impact. And to get the crispy skin, water is the enemy. You don't want the skin to be too wet, or else the skin will not crispen and golden. So I'm going to slide this aside for just a second and get out my roasting pan. Simple basic roasting pan. I have a small tray set inside it. I'm sorry for the noise. That tray is just to keep the chicken or the turkey off of the bottom of the roasting pan. This way the drippings can drip past it. If you're going to make gravy out of the drippings, this is really important. If you're not, and you're like me, then it's just mildly important. Now, on this turkey breast, it's kind of cut awkwardly. Here's my cavity that I'm going to be putting my aromatics. And so I need to prep the aromatics next for the turkey. I also have the oven prepping to 500 degrees. And this is very important because what we're going to do is we're going to do a very short bake, about 20 minutes at 500, and then we're going to drop the temperature down to a more reasonable temperature and continue the bake from there. So what goes in our aromatics? Well, the goal is to evoke all the flavors of November in a turkey. So to do that, I start with the Good Eats roast turkey recipe, which I'll drop in the chat here. But we want 1 red apple, half an onion, a cinnamon stick, a cup of water, rosemary, sage are the primary ingredients. So I'm going to set my turkey aside. Get out a clean cutting board so as to avoid cross-contamination, because that one's covered in turkey. And we'll get an apple core. I want cinnamon sticks. And my onion's over there, and so is my apple. Now I need a small microwave-safe bowl, of which I have none. But this one will do fine. So for the apple, I mean, literally any red apple will do. You want it to be red because you want a sweet apple and not a tart apple. I am using a Pink Lady this year. I've had success in the past with Honey Crisps. And, I mean, just about any apple will do. Damn it, Ryan. The oven says it's at 500, but the oven timer doesn't, or the oven temperature probe doesn't agree, so I'm going to let it continue to go up. So, for the apple, you can usually just slice it into quarters, but I like to use an apple core, because I have one, and because it lets me pop the core of the apple out, which has all the seeds and stuff that's just generally not good eats. And toss it aside while keeping the apple pieces. We also want half of an onion, which I will accomplish by taking an onion and cutting it in half. Again, no one's eating this onion, no one's eating this apple. They will be discarded at the end because you will have extracted all of their flavors and aromatics into the turkey. So, like, the fact I'm peeling the skin is just because the skin brings nothing to the aromatics. And we toss all of that in here, along with 1 cup of water. That's a little more full than I usually do, but I usually use a bigger bowl, so that's on me. So with all that, we also want to shove in our cinnamon stick. And then we're going to microwave this on high for about 4 or 5 minutes. And the reason for that is we want the water to heat up, boil through, not boil, but like pass through. I'm going to need a little bit bigger bowl. We want the water to heat up to infuse the apple and the onion and the cinnamon stick and to start making flavors. This way, when it's inside the turkey and insulated from the high heat of the oven, it's already warm. Otherwise, we'd have to wait for the heat of the turkey to penetrate the aromatics, and that just takes too long. So, slide this in for 5 minutes. So, at this point, I'm going to take my excess onion. Actually, that's kind of perfect. And toss it back in the fridge. I've switched the sweet potatoes to low. I'm going to bring them over here. And while we're letting that cook down, we can check the doneness on our sweet potatoes. Because sweet potatoes are woody and starchy, and they take a while to break down, but if they break down too far, they'll taste overcooked. So, there are our sweet potatoes. And if I use the fork method, you can see that the fork just passes right through them and they mash. The sweet potatoes are in a very good spot. They've got a bit more fluid than they usually do because I had extra sugar. But that's okay. If Kahan doesn't have a strong preference, I'm just going to mash these and bake them with a marshmallow topping. I might actually skip the marshmallow topping. But at this point, they can sit in the crock pot on warm until we're ready to do the end of the meal. So I've plugged my crock pot back in. Potatoes are set to warm. 3 minutes left on these. I don't want to do anything else with the turkey until I get those aromatics in, because I just want to do it once. You can start to smell the apple and onion in the kitchen. And I'm just kind of stalling for time while I wait for the aromatics to get done. As you can see, I got up at 10 a.m. and I made stuffing and sweet potatoes, and that took an hour. And now at 1 p.m., I've spent 5 minutes prepping the turkey that I did the brine turkey, 30 minutes the night before. And I'm really sitting at this like, how am I going to fill stream time? Because there's not much left to do. Making a Thanksgiving dinner is not nearly as hard as it's been made out to be. That doesn't mean that it's simple, but I'm just saying that you can make the whole meal in about 2 hours, spread throughout the day, spending the rest of your time with or avoiding your loved ones. So as I continue to wait for the microwave to tick down, we will need oil next. I can hear the water fizzing, so we're good on the aromatics. As you can see, they're slightly cooked. And with a regular turkey that is set with the hole facing up, I like to just stick a canning funnel in the turkey and then shove all the aromatics through. But I don't have that luxury with this breast because this should be my cavity access, but it's not there. The way they've cut this turkey means that my cavity access is literally to flip the bird upside down, pour everything in, and pray it stays while I flip the bird back over. There's my cinnamon stick. Again, I'm not too worried about it if some of the stuff doesn't fit in the bird, or if it falls out into the water on the bottom. That water's still going to be in the oven. It's still going to be with the bird. It's going to be fine. So now this is a very, very warm aromatic chamber. And I'm trying very hard not to put my hands anywhere near. And yep, that's the sound of all the apples spilling everywhere. It's fine. See, bird's still mostly facing up. Bird's level, or kind of the middle. Those apples out there are going to be fine. They're going to give the bird plenty of flavor. So now, what I want to do is take some oil and you can use vegetable oil for this. I don't like using olive oil on turkeys because the subtle flavors in the olive oil just don't match what I want from a Thanksgiving turkey, but you can. You can also use butter. Melted butter does a wonderful job. But what we're doing with this oil is we're just putting enough on the turkey and rubbing it over the skin that we're putting some extra fat into the skin so that when we put it in under high heat, the turkey skin is going to golden and give you that beautiful Norman Rockwell painting GBD look. Doesn't take much. Basically, you just want to run your hands over the bird with the oil just until you get that that kind of slight greasy feeling all over the bird. Sometimes I even put the oil directly on my hands so that I can control where it initially falls. Now, to be honest, with breasts like this, it's kind of frustrating because they're cut slightly wrong. The cavity should be tilted up. The wing should be down. This breast is not tilted the way I would like it to be tilted compared to a regular turkey, but we're going to make it do. So after you do that, you wash your hands for the upkeep time and get them really dry because we're just going to sprinkle a little bit of kosher salt over the skin. And again, that's to give that skin that little bit of salty, umami flavor. Ineth, if you're watching, can you bring me some more paper towels? Now with our oven set to 500 and convect, we are going to start this bird. Let me get the lid on the oil so that nothing bad happens. Oh, with your aromatics, you also want to add in, and this can go right, again, if you've got a properly set up bird, it can go in the bird. Since my bird's inverted, I'm going to do this in the water underneath, and it will come out just fine. I want 4 sprigs of rosemary. 1, 2. That is a rather big sprig. So 3, and what the heck? It's Thanksgiving. Things can be flavorful. 4 sprigs of rosemary. And then we want 6 leaves of sage, which we put over here. That's going to be more than 6 leaves, but you know what? Thanksgiving, flavorful food. Again, you want these fresh, if possible. If you're using dried herbs, there's nothing wrong with it, but you probably want to tuck those into the cavity. Even putting them in the warm water at the start is best. With fresh herbs, you don't want to cook them in the cavity with the other stuff because you'll run the flavor out. And I like just a smidge of fresh thyme on my bird. So I'm going to Toss a little bit of fresh thyme in there. Sprinkle some kosher salt, just a smidge. And now what I do different from the Good Eats bird is I like a little bit of dried parsley, again, right on the bird. And I'm not going to do an extra cinnamon stick this year because it's a small bird and cinnamon goes a long way. We'll call it there. It's not a big difference. Sometimes I put on herbes de Provenance, which is basically parsley, sage, rosemary, thyme, and a bit of lavender. But I'm not feeling lavender today. So now with my oven at 500, I'm going to set the timer for 20 minutes. Pop the oven open. And I'm going to slide my bird right in on the lowest rack. Can I get some paper towels since you aren't watching? And we've got a turkey going. In 20 minutes, we will set our fancy electronic probe to 161 degrees. Stick our probe in the deepest part of the breast. And that's when we'll know when dinner's ready. We are not going to do anything resembling timing this because the bird's done when the bird's done. So I'm going to set that aside. So we can have a brief talk about our stuffing. And the stuffing is going to want about an hour in the oven at 350. Well, we're going to drop the oven down to 350 for the turkey. So we're just going to toss the stuffing in when we take the lid off turkey. I'm estimating the turkey will be done in about an hour. I could be off by a little bit. But I know the stuffing... I can only put the stuffing in for 30 minutes covered. And then look at the timing on the turkey and go, well, it's going to have more than an hour. Or, ooh, it's going to have less than an hour. And if it's going to have more, I can pull the stuffing out, let it rest a little bit, then put it back in. If it's going to take more time, well, that's all the more reason for me to get the stuffing in as soon as possible. But I don't want to put it in while the oven's at 500 because I'll just nuke the stuffing to death. And ovens are actually pretty efficient at dumping heat. So when I drop the oven from 500 to 350, yes, there will be a little bit of time where the oven's too hot, but the oven fan, especially in a convection oven, will circulate and drop the heat rather efficiently. So, herbs aside, all we really have left to do is mashed potatoes. And I can promise you that mashed potatoes take 30 minutes. Total prep time of 50 minutes means that I should so in 20 minutes, when we drop the oven, is when I will start on the mashed potatoes. And even that's sort of a rough estimate. Now, I was originally going to make a certain size portion of mashed potatoes. Ryan and I have decided that we want leftovers, so I have more potatoes than I planned. I need to take a moment and figure out how much potatoes I have. Of course it smells amazing. I'm cooking. So, pop that on there. Set it to ounces. I want 3.5 pounds of russet potatoes. All right, so I only have 1.5 pounds of russet potatoes. So that means I'm going to cut the whole recipe in half. That's fine. I mean, except the garlic. I'm not cutting the garlic in half. I've got standards. Oh, I can assure you all that I do not have the coronavirus because I was just overwhelmed by a blast of time getting shot out of the oven. So, lacking anything to entertain you guys with, let's start chopping potatoes. So, the trick to mashed potatoes is cooking them before you cook them. So what you want to do is you want to dice the potatoes to about the same size and place them in a large saucepan and cover them with water and add some salt. And then bring to a boil. So when they say cut to the same size, you can vastly change the texture and the time it takes to make your mashed potatoes by how finely you cut them. If you dice your potatoes super small, like what you'd expect from like restaurant hash or frozen potatoes O'Brien, you can actually cook your mashed potatoes in half the time. Because the incredibly small potato will the heat will penetrate it faster, it'll break down faster, and you'll have faster made potatoes. You can also cut your potatoes into huge chunks, and it'll take even longer to cook them, but then you'll get nice. Your cooking will be less even, and if your goal is to have lumpy mashed potatoes, which, like my sister, for example, absolutely adores lumpy mashed potatoes, I still don't have paper towels from him. That's the best way to get those. I prefer my mashed potatoes not velvety smooth, but pretty close. So I will be using more traditional methods. My potato masher is clean, so that's good. Thank you for getting me the paper towels. I heard you say something about paper towels. I thought you said grab paper towels. No, I asked you to do it on the stream, then I asked you to do it as you walked past, and
I didn't hear it because I'm deaf.
So I rinsed those potatoes off because produce in the supermarket is probably safe. Probably. But you should really wash your vegetables at home just to make sure stuff's off of them. Rinsing them isn't enough. You do need to scrub them a little bit. I just do a light scrub with my hands. Potatoes are less likely to have the poison problem, the pesticide problem, because they're grown underground. It doesn't mean they don't have the dirt problem. So, don't want to take this turkey out of the oven at all, but I can assure you all that the skin has started to become a glorious golden color. And when we get there, you will I'll be more than happy to bring it out and show you. So, gonna just clean this knife real quick that I used earlier for minimum cross-contamination. I used it to cut herbs, so it shouldn't be that big of a deal, but and on the cooking surface, how does that even look right now? You're seeing more of my feet than I'm comfortable with. But I'll get a pan on for these potatoes to go into. There's an excellent sized pan, and that tells me where the camera's angled relative to where it needs to be. Ta-da. So let's start breaking down potatoes. Even slices are the trick to all of this. As you can see, I'm not going for too fine of slicing on my potatoes, but I'm also not making giant chunks. Go. Take a stack of these and a stack of these. And one of the best tricks to getting even slicing on things is to stack them while you cut, because then one cut is actually n cuts, where n is the depth of your stack. Now, a lot of mashed potato recipes will say, remove the skins. You will note that I did not remove the skins. I like skins in my mashed potatoes. And if you do, great. If you don't, just do everything I'm doing after you peel the potatoes. So these chunks are a little bit on the bigger side than I intended. It's kind of worth it to, on some of the biggest ones, just for me to hop in there and slice in half or trim. You know. Again, the smaller the smaller the nuggets, the faster it'll cook. And I mean, there is something to be said for cutting them to different sizes on purpose, so that you have some that'll be a little woodier and a little less well done, so that you get lumps in your mashed potatoes. If lumps is what you desire, if you're anti-lump, then you want to be extra certain to get everything small and evenly sized. Again, just a couple of the biggest ones I'm going to grab back. And we do it again. Cutting these ones a little smaller because I didn't like how the last batch came out. So there's a trick to cooking that also exists in playing a musical instrument. Don't tell people you made mistakes and they'll never know. Like, if someone tastes something funny and says it to you, you can say, oh, yeah, I did that on purpose because I was trying this different seasoning, or I just didn't feel that the herb that I forgot was up to snuff. Like, just flatter people, and it's fine. If they taste something that they don't recognize, like when my brother tastes cinnamon in the gravy because I put cinnamon in the turkey, you can point out that, like, yeah, it's a different flavor to kind of bring that November-ness to it. Also, you can just, like, what I tend to do with my family is, well, yeah, you wouldn't let me put all the herbs I wanted to put in, so I can only put a couple of them in, and that leads to a disbalance. Maybe next year you should let me put all the herbs in. That never works because my family's from Ohio and likes their food stupidly bland. But, we're not in Ohio, are we? For those of you keeping score at home, no, we are not in Ohio. We are in another state. One nice chopped up potato. Now, we can have a talk about types of potatoes and mashed potatoes, because not all potatoes are made equal. I am using russet, aka Idaho potatoes, the big bakers, because they have a different carbohydrate balance than white potatoes and red potatoes. White and reds are closer to each other than russet or baking. I forget the exact details potato to potato, but I do know that russets make for fluffier mashed potatoes, where whites and reds make for, I feel like waxy is the word I want to use, but that I don't mean to cast aspersions. But so if you like fluffy, creamy mashed potatoes, russets are the way to go. The other thing that you can do to make your potatoes fluffy and creamy is use cream. Like, straight up, when I make mashed potatoes during the rest of the year, and I just want to have, like mashed potatoes with some chicken or something, I use milk. On Thanksgiving, I use half and half, because it's Thanksgiving. And I want creamy, delicious mashed potatoes, not I made this tonight mashed potatoes. So, as we can see from the small cam, that I will switch to the big cam as soon as I dry my hands. We've got a glorious golden pile of potatoes here. Our oven's down to 6 minutes, and our turkey breast is a beautiful shade of gold. I can't bring it out and show you, because that would ruin the cooking process. And I don't want to, because I just want to keep it rolling. But pop over to our cooking counter and get a little bit of heat under those. There we go. I'm going to toss on some kosher salt. Again, the recipe calls for a certain amount, but that's fine. And I just want to have enough water to cover them. So that's good. Shake them a little bit. And I'm going to put a lid on that. I should have thought I hadn't got one of my pots that has a clear lid. We're doing that. And that's just to get them up to a boil faster. Once they start boiling, I will take that lid off. So it is time for the butter and cream, but it's not time for the butter and cream because I'm not doing that until we're closer to having these done. So again, we're entering another one of those dead zones at Thanksgiving where you can either go out and spend time with your family, or you can do like me and sit here quietly and stall to fill time. I'm looking for... But so these don't use butter. That's right. They're using heavy cream instead of butter. Don't worry, butter will end up in the mashed potatoes. I'm not a monster. I also have an appropriate amount of garlic because I'm not a monster. That also tells me where the camera's focused. I'm waiting for a moment here because in 2 minutes I'm going to open the oven up and put the stuffing in and just generally be prepared to like make a mess. So rather than get started halfway into the mashed potatoes and be like, oh my god, I need to stir the cream, but I need to move stuff around the oven, I'm just going to wait. And that is an important thing to remember, that like proper prep time includes giving yourself time to do things. It does you no good to have everything ready at the exact same moment because you can't be at every moment, everywhere at the exact same moment. So you want to try to stagger your cooking so that stuff lines up. Like I'm going to use this opportunity to stand over the sink and just wipe out that loaf pan that we kind of put stuffing into but then decided not to, because I intend to use it for the sweet potatoes in about half an hour. So just taking a sponge to it and scrubbing off camera. You can't see me because I'm a good host. Will give me a shiny, clean dish for sweet potatoes later. And we'll just wipe that out so that it's nice and dry, and then set it aside. And I timed it perfectly because I have a minute. Yeah, we're gonna drop the heat down to 350 a minute early. When you open ovens that are set to 500, open them well away from yourself. If you try to like look in while you open it, you're just gonna get a blast of steam in your face and probably burn yourself. Kind of like I just did. Gonna grab my hot utensil. And you know what? I'm gonna do the bad thing for the bird. And I mean, you're here to see a bird. Over to crap. Move the half and half. Move the garlic. And this is what our bird looks like 20 minutes in. It's GBD. Now the skin is kind of causing me a problem because the smaller skin, the reduced skin on the breast did pull back a little bit more than I was hoping for, but c'est la vie, it will be fine. I'm going to slide the bird in the oven to the side so I can fit the stuffing in there. Grab my probe, which we set to 161 degrees earlier. Insert it into the thickest part of the breast without burning myself. That's not a good spot. No, that's an even worse spot. Set the probe down. You want to avoid hitting bone. And I can assure you that this is actually easier in a real bird than it is in a breast because of the orientation. But I get it in there, close it up, and I am going to set a timer for 30 minutes for the stuffing, not for the bird. Now I can tell you that the internal temp of my bird is already 350 degrees because small breast, hot oven, you can do the math. But it's not cooked through yet, and those last 10 degrees are going to take a lot longer than you think. Not too much longer. We're probably about 40 minutes out from the bird. It's a little hotter than I thought it would be. So, checking on our mashed potatoes, we can see that foam start to form. I am going to start the back burner. Flick our mashed potatoes to the back burner, where they are still visible, but no longer the center of attention. Pull the heat down on this a little bit. Put our lid back on. Pop the vent. And we're going to start on that cream. So I want about 8 fluid ounces of half and half, or 1 cup, since nothing in English makes any goddamn sense. I'm also going to want to toss in 6 cloves of garlic. When you buy pre-minced garlic, 6 cloves is 3 tablespoons. Tablespoons or teaspoons? 3 teaspoons, which is 1 tablespoon. So this is a half tablespoon. So there's a half tablespoon. And there's a half tablespoon. And before Kahan shouts at me, pop this over cooking. We've got our boil over happening, so we can drop the heat a little bit on the back burner and cook. Front burner, we can pull the heat up. Crack our half and half. And I want... Now, milk and heat is a delicate proposition. On the one hand, more milk is delicious. On the other hand, If milk goes past 180 degrees, more like 170 degrees, weird things happen because it scalds. And as a barista for 9 years, I know me some milk. You want to keep your eye on the milk is what I'm trying to say. Now, when you mix milk into other things, the other things allow chemical processes to change. You can have delicious, delicious milk, and it's fine hot. But straight milk hot, you don't want to take past 170, 180 degrees, or else it's going to scald and it's going to change flavor to be really terrible. So right now, I'm just trying to get the milk warm, get the garlic infused in it. And because I like my mashed potatoes a little creamier, I'm going to cheat. So remember how I said the bird would be an hour? We're not even 5 minutes in, and this probe is telling me that the bird is done. I am skeptical, but I'm also not that skeptical. Again, this is a small bird, but usually my chickens take longer than this, and chickens are smaller than turkeys. So I'm gonna take a moment and play with the probe placement. Milk's looking fine from across the room. Let's pull the probe out. Really wish I knew where the other glove was. Okay, there we go. I moved my probe placement, and
I heard you say you wish you knew where something was.
the other glove.
Oh.
So I moved my probe placement, and that's not a great sign, but we're okay. The turkey is actually at 150 degrees, not 161, which means I wasn't in the thickest part of the breast. And that's an important thing for everybody. Like, you'll be making Thanksgiving dinner, and you'll be like, oh, the turkey says it's done. Check the temperature in a couple spots, just to be sure. So you can smell that garlic entering the kitchen, and if you can't, I'm sorry, go make Thanksgiving in your own kitchen, smell the garlic. The mashed potatoes are still rather firm. In the meantime, I need some fresh Parmesan cheese. About 6 ounces. Which I will be using a Romano Parmigiano blend because I like it better. Pull the heat down on the milk a little bit. Grab myself a tasting spoon. That is done, so I kill the heat. Set that aside, slide things. Pull it over to here. And put a lid on it just to keep it warm. I fear I will need the dishwasher. So I'm gonna start the dishwasher. Hopefully that's not too loud in the background. We can move the mashed potatoes back to the front burner since they're the center of attention again. And all we're doing is just waiting for the potatoes to start coming apart with the fork. And we're pretty close. See how, like, it's hard to see on camera, but, like, they sort of come to the fork. Yeah. So I'm going to give those about 2 more minutes, which is good. Turkey's still got plenty of time. And I want a bowl to mix them in, but all of our mixing bowls are kapoots. So I'm going to improvise. With this lovely Dutch oven. It's great for 3 reasons. 1, it can go in the oven, it can go in the microwave, and it has its own lid, which will keep the mashed potatoes warm. Like, half of Thanksgiving is finding dishes with lids to keep the thing inside of them warm. Con, do you like your mashed potatoes lumpier or more tender? Con, do you like your mashed potatoes lumpier or more tender? She says again. So for draining the mashed potatoes, I have this funnel and jar set up. I'm not going to capture all the water, but a trick I learned from my grandmother is that the starchy water in the potatoes is actually really useful for getting that right blend. It's the same trick that you use starchy pasta water to finish your spaghetti sauces. Same trick, different application. And I've got a jar set up to capture it so that I get as much as I want. These are almost there. How are we doing on the turkey? Turkey's at 158 degrees, which means we will not have the full hour to cook the stuffing, which is fine, because the turkey's going to need some time to rest. I'm going to need some time to rest, and some other things are going to come together in the final moments. So that's more than enough water that I'll need. The rest of it can go down the drain. Kill the heat in the Dutch oven. And now I've got some beautiful boiled potatoes. I'm going to grab my potato masher. And I want to add 6 ounces of grated Parmesan. How much is in this thing to start? Not sure. So, step 1, I just want to get a little bit of a mash on them before I start putting cream and whatnot in. Once I get a base mash. That's the turkey telling me once again it's done. And this time, I believe it. So I'll hit my timer. Pull my turkey out. Now here's the thing. Even if everything are ready, I wouldn't serve this turkey right now anyway, because it needs to rest. This beautiful, gorgeous, delicious looking turkey needs to rest. So I'm going to give it a moment to rest with the lid off, while I just sort of mash these potatoes lightly. Get that oven closed back up so that the stuffing continues to cook. And then I'm going to grab I knocked the magnet off and the battery casing. There's the lid. So, the lid of the roasting pan now has a use, and that use is keeping everything. So if we look back at the potatoes, which I will now make the main view, they look like mashed potatoes already.
How quick the rolls need to go in?
Well, the turkey's done, so how long do the rolls take?
20, 30?
Then they should go in pretty soon.
So nowish?
Yes.
Is it okay if I turn the oven heat up? Because the oven needs to
Yes. Don't wait for it to get hot to put them in.
I'm not going to.
And I'm just gonna, at this point, I'm pretty much putting in cheese to taste. So that's why I have that tasting spoon from earlier. I will be figuring out if these are right or not by taste. At the very last minute, right before I take everything out of the oven, I will put the Dutch oven back in the oven so they just get a little bit warmer. So let's try this out. I need a little more cheese. They have a hint of Parmesan, not a strong Parmesan flavor.
Alright, that's going up to 425.
Yep.
The rolls are in. They'll go 15, 20, so when that's done.
Did you clear the timer that I had set there? Of course you did. Because that was the timer for the mashed potato, or the stuffing. He's a lug. Didn't even hear me yell at him. I'm going to pull the lid off the stuffing. Give it another taste. That's good. That's where we want it. So pop this off. Add just a little bit of the potato starch. Stir it through. If you have fresh green onion, this is where you add fresh green onion. Bam! Pardon me, Inky. You might remember these sweet potatoes from such moments as a few minutes ago. They are caramelized and delicious looking. But caramelized and delicious is not complete. So we've got two options here. I can mash them, or I can candy them. And I've really fallen in love with them being mashed, so I'm going to do that. Just use a scoop. Taking just enough liquid in. And just look at that dark, rich liquid. All right. Grab my potato masher. This is where it really helps to have a kitchen gremlin that does your most important dishes in between. Mine's moderating chat and talking with his mother. And he's doing one of those better than the other. But with a quick scrubbing, I have a clean potato masher. And we just mash these down and together. Now, candied sweet potatoes are already a wonderfully sweet dish, and I do not bemoan anyone who doesn't take it to the final and logical extreme that I do. But it is a tradition in my family to put marshmallows over the candied sweet potatoes. And, I mean, sometimes I have to adhere to tradition. So we're just going to lightly dust the top with marshmallows. Shoving a couple extra in my mouth just to make sure they're fresh. And then I'll park this in the oven for a few minutes just to get the marshmallows melted down. So we have our turkey, 2 sides in the oven, third side waiting to go back into the oven. All that's left is the cream corn. And look, I'm not going to insult anybody's attention here. Intelligence here. I'm making cream corn. It's coming out of 2 cans. And that's how it is. Like, I could steam a bunch of broccoli or green beans. I could there are a lot of things I could do right now. But for most of the vegetables you have at Thanksgiving, it's literally just steam the vegetable. And I'm confident that everyone watching can steam a vegetable. Can everyone watching make cream corn? Well, definitely. This is the way my mother always made it, which is nostalgic for me. You take a can of cream-style corn and a can of whole kernel corn, drain the fluid from the whole kernel corn, which I did not cut into enough of the can to drain. There we go. Slit your finger open because the can doesn't open cleanly. Put that over to the stovetop view. Mix it down through. and heat it on medium heat while you find yourself a Band-Aid. So now with 6 minutes left on the rolls, Band-Aid. Lid on the corn. I about have a Thanksgiving dinner here. I can recycle these 2 cans into cans. Now I guess it's time to get to the cutting, portioning, and serving, which will happen in 6 minutes. Hint, Kahan. Yes, 5 minutes now. I mean, you could talk to me via chat, but he instead insists on yelling down the hallway. One candied dish of sweet potatoes. Glassware's hot, Goth. No shit. One candied dish of sweet potatoes. One jug of cream salad corn. One beautiful turkey. One jar of cranberry orange relish from yesterday's stream. It's only so much camera space, really. I could work to adjust the camera up to show more, but it's not there. One Dutch oven of mashed potatoes. I mean, they already had their time in the sun. 1 golden brown pan of stuffing. One rack of homemade yeast biscuits, courtesy of Kahan. And a GBD turkey. And it would not be much of a Thanksgiving stream if I did not carve the turkey. And my camera's playing the out of focus game again, so we'll just have to deal with it. No, it won't be, but you know. Large knife. Maybe you should have let him cool. That's fine. I don't know if you can hear that skin cracking, but that's what the inside of our turkey looks like. Done down to the middle. Brought down with carryover, or up a little further with carryover temperature, and then done. You have one Thanksgiving meal. Thank you everyone for spending Thanksgiving with me. I'm going to go stuff my face. So I will see you all in the future. I might get on stream later. I might just be out of things to say. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I hope you get to eat something. Bye.